In our first discussion, we promised to reveal the most common financial trap that believers fall into.
Mm.
And it's a specific mechanism that doesn't just, drain your bank account. It actually drains your spiritual life.
It really does.
The Apostle Paul identifies it explicitly in his first letter to Timothy.
Okay.
He calls it the desire to be rich.
And it's so important to clarify right away what that means, because I think we often get this wrong.
We do. We jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Paul isn't condemning the possession of money. He's not saying that having a surplus is a sin. He's warning against the craving for it.
The craving.
Yes. The text in 1 Timothy chapter 6 describes a very specific progression. It says that those who have this determination, this will to be wealthy, they fall into a temptation and then into a snare.
That word snare is critical.
Yeah.
It implies a trap that you don't see until you've already stepped into it. It's camouflaged.
And the text goes on to say, this trap leads to senseless and harmful desires,
Which eventually plunge people into ruin and destruction.
It's a downward spiral. Starts with a simple desire, which turns into a temptation, becomes a trap, and then ends in ruin. That's the invisible trap we're talking about today.
And to understand why we fall for it, we have to get to the root of the issue.
The underlying error in our thinking.
And that brings us to the core of today's deep dive. This is Scripture and Stewardship Biblical Finance Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If you're returning for this third installment, we're glad you're continuing this journey with us. We're really building this framework brick by brick.
We are.
And if you're new, we're looking at the fundamental principles that govern biblical finance. And today, we are dismantling the ownership myth.
This is that invisible error that feeds the trap we just mentioned. It's the belief deep down that what we have belongs to us.
It sounds so simple, but it is the root of almost every financial anxiety and, frankly, every act of greed.
It is.
To really understand this, we have to look at the foundational theology of ownership found in the Psalms, specifically Psalm 24, verse 1.
It's a verse a lot of people know. You might see it on a plaque in a hallway, but very few people apply it to their checking accounts.
What does it say?
The psalm states pretty categorically that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
Okay, let's unpack that because it leaves very little wiggle room.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't say the earth was the Lord's, right? As if he created it, wound up the clock, and then just handed the deed over.
And then stepped back. No.
It's present tense. It is currently his.
It is. And that phrase, fullness thereof, is so comprehensive, we can't just carve out exceptions.
What does it include?
In the original Hebrew context, the word used there, mellow, implies everything that fills it. So this includes natural resources, gold, silver, oil, land. It includes agricultural products.
Right.
But it also includes wealth, and crucially, those who dwell therein.
So if we take that text seriously, it means God holds the title deed to the planet, the resources on the planet.
And the people on the planet.
That includes you, and that includes me.
It does. It means that mathematically, God retains 100% ownership.
And this is where the math gets hard for us.
Mm-hmm.
The prevailing mindset, the one many of us operate under without even thinking, is that we earn our money, so we own it. We trade our time, our sweat, our skills, and the paycheck is the reward.
Right.
We might generously give God 10%, a tithe, but we tacitly believe the other 90% is ours to do with as we please.
That's what we call the ownership mindset. It says, my money, my choice. It views assets as personal rights. I earn this, I deserve this.
It creates this separation where God gets his cut and we get ours.
But the biblical reality is what we call the stewardship mindset. And that mindset looks at the bank account and says, his money, his glory.
It completely changes the definition of who we are. If God owns 100%, we own zero.
Zero.
We're not owners, we are money managers. We are handling assets that belong to someone else.
And that isn't a demotion, it's actually a very high calling. It connects directly to the very first job description humanity was ever given.
You're talking about the creation mandate in Genesis.
Yes. Genesis 1.28. And this is a crucial detail. This command comes before the fall.
Before sin entered the world.
Before sin entered the world, God gave humanity a job. He told them to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it.
That distinction is so vital. We often think of work as a necessary evil, a result of the curse.
Right, that if Adam hadn't sinned, we'd all just be relaxing.
Exactly, sitting on clouds playing harps. But stewardship managing resources was part of God's design for human flourishing from the very beginning.
Yes. Work is not the curse. The futility and the difficulty of work came with the curse. but the assignment itself is holy.
So let's look at those specific commands because they define what a steward actually does. We aren't just holding the purse strings. We're supposed to be doing something.
We are. And there are two Hebrew words here that are incredibly instructive. The first one is kabosh, which gets translated as subdue.
They can sound a bit harsh in modern English.
It can, like you're conquering an enemy. But in this context, it means to bring under control and to cultivate. It implies that the earth has raw potential, but it requires work to make it productive.
So stewardship isn't just preservation. It's not just burying a talent in the ground to keep it safe.
No, it's about cultivation. Think of a gardener. The garden has the potential for weeds or for fruit. To kabosh, the garden means to actively work the soil to produce something good.
Okay, and the second word?
The second word is rada, translated as have dominion. This describes a delegated authority.
Delegated.
We are like vice-regents. We are ruling on behalf of the king. We aren't the king, but we represent his interests.
This really challenges the idea of passive stewardship. Sometimes we think being a good steward just means being frugal, not spending money.
Just hoarding it.
Right. But if the mandate is to be fruitful and multiply and to cultivate, then stewardship is actually about productivity. It's about expansion and improvement of the master's assets.
Exactly. We are called to take the raw materials God has entrusted to us, whether that's money, talent, or time, and add value to them. We're supposed to be productive managers.
But this drive to be productive can easily warp into that trap we started with, the desire to be rich. How do we distinguish between biblical productivity and the greed that 1 Timothy warns us about? Because from the outside, they can look pretty similar. Both involve growth.
That is the crucial balance. The warning in 1 Timothy is about the love of money and the desire for riches as an end in themselves. It's about the heart's motivation.
So what's a check? How do we know?
The Bible gives us a very clear psychological reason why that path leads to ruin. It's found in the book of Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes 5.9. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money.
This is a spiritual law that functions almost like gravity. It's just true. It states that the love of money is insatiable.
Can't be filled.
Never. The verse continues, saying, he who loves wealth will not be satisfied with his income. The Hebrew word for satisfied there is saba, which means filled or content.
We see this play out in what you might call the treadmill of greed.
That's a great way to put it. It's a phenomenon we can all recognize. The person making $50,000 a year convinces themselves that if they just made $75,000, they'd be secure and happy.
They truly believe the gap in their soul is exactly $25,000 wide.
They do. But when they reach $75,000, the lifestyle inflates, the desires expand, and suddenly the target is $100,000.
The goalpost is always moving.
Always. And the reason for this is spiritual. We're trying to satisfy a spiritual need, a longing for significance, for security, for the infinite, with a material solution.
You can't fill a spiritual void with physical currency.
It's the wrong tool for the job. It creates this paradox where the more you get, the more you realize it isn't enough.
The text in Ecclesiastes calls this vanity. It's like chasing vapor. You grab at the mist and your hand comes up empty.
And that brings us right back to the ownership myth. When you see yourself as the owner, you're looking to your assets to provide your security and your identity.
And since money is unstable and finite,
you never feel safe. You always need just a little bit more to feel secure.
Whereas the steward knows the resources aren't theirs to begin with, so their security comes from the owner, not the assets.
Precisely. If I'm just the manager, I don't have to carry the burden of the owner. I just have to be faithful to the owner's instructions.
Before we move to how we actually apply this shift in our daily lives, I want to pause for a second. We're going through some heavy theological concepts here.
We are.
From the Hebrew meanings of dominion to the spiritual psychology of greed. If you want to keep learning God's financial wisdom and ensure you don't miss future teachings that build on this foundation, we invite you to subscribe.
It's really the best way to walk this journey with us.
Okay, now let's get practical. We've established God owns 100% and we are managers.
All right.
We've established that the desire for wealth as a source of satisfaction is a trap. So how does this change the way we handle our wallet on a Tuesday afternoon?
It requires what we call the Stewardship Shift. It's a fundamental change in the primary question we ask when making financial decisions.
Most of us, when we're standing in a store or looking at a car lot, ask one question. Can I afford this?
Right. And what we usually mean by that is there enough money in the bank account to cover this without the check bouncing?
It's a question based entirely on the balance sheet.
It is. But if we aren't the owners, that's the wrong question.
So what's the right question?
The new question, the steward's question is, what does the owner want me to do with his resources?
Wow, that changes everything. Just because the money is there doesn't mean the owner wants it spent on that specific item.
Let's use an analogy to make this really concrete. Imagine you work for a large corporation as a procurement officer. You have a corporate credit card.
Okay.
The company is wealthy, so the credit limit on that card is, say, $500,000.
So technically, I have access to $500,000.
Yeah, you do. Now imagine, you walk into a luxury electronics store and you see a massive home theater system for $20,000. You swipe the corporate card, the transaction goes through.
It's approved. I could technically afford it.
You could, but when you get back to the office, you're going to have a very serious problem.
I'm going to be fired.
You will likely be fired and maybe even prosecuted. Why? Not because the money wasn't there, but because the owner did not authorize that purchase. You used company resources for personal pleasure without permission.
That is a terrifying image, but it clarifies the issue perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
When we view our personal finances through that lens, every single spending decision becomes a spiritual decision.
It has to. It becomes a matter of prayer.
It creates a pause. Instead of impulse buying, we have to check in with headquarters. Lord, this is your money. Do you want it invested? Do you want it given away? Do you want it used for my family's needs?
And I want to be clear, sometimes the answer is yes. God isn't a miser. He gives us all things richly to enjoy.
But the permission has to come from him.
Exactly. It shifts the weight from what do I want to what does he want?
And I assume this applies to saving as well.
It does. If God owns the retirement fund, then we aren't hoarding for our own selfish security. We're saving because the Bible instructs us to be prudent, which we'll discuss next time. But the goal is still to have resources available for his purposes in the future.
It also revolutionizes giving. If I think I own my money, giving is a painful act of losing something that belongs to me. It feels like a loss.
You're taking a slice of your pie and giving it away.
But if God owns it all, giving is simply transferring funds from one of his accounts to another, according to the owner's memo.
It's not our generosity, in a sense. It's our obedience. We're just the delivery service.
That takes so much pressure off. It also takes the pride away. We can't be proud of our generosity if we're just distributing what isn't ours.
But it also takes the fear away.
How so?
If I'm a steward, my needs are the owner's responsibility. As long as I'm managing his affairs according to his will, I can trust him to provide for his employee, so to speak.
We need to wrap this up with a final reality check. We've talked about the theology of ownership, but Ecclesiastes gives us a very stark, physical reminder of why the ownership myth is actually a lie.
It's the naked truth, found in Ecclesiastes 5.15. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand.
That is a sobering image. We enter the delivery room with nothing. No pockets, no wallet, no assets.
And we leave the funeral home the exact same way.
It proves that ownership is an illusion. You can't truly own something that you cannot keep.
If it can be taken from you, or if you have to leave it behind, you were only ever using it. You were a temporary user, a manager.
So everything that happens between those 2 points, birth and death, is management, is a temporary assignment. We are managing eternal assets, but we're doing it in a temporary window.
And that perspective should free us from the trap of greed. Why ruin your soul trying to accumulate things you are contractually obligated to leave behind?
The only thing that follows us is the record of how we managed what was entrusted to us.
That is the ultimate accountability.
There is so much more to unpack regarding how we manage these resources practically. We've talked about the mindset, but what about the method?
And that leads us to the subject of diligence.
So next time, we're going to look at the smallest teacher in the Bible.
The ant.
We're going to look at the ant. It's fascinating that Proverbs sends us to an insect to learn how to avoid financial ruin.
It really is.
We'll explore the diligence principle and how it stands as the biblical wall against sudden poverty. You won't want to miss that. This has been the Scripture and Stewardship Biblical Finance Podcast.